good or what is bad? I don't know. And I wish people would stop pretending that they do know. I just want to say something else on climate change. Actually, our friend Tom Harris pointed this out to me recently. It's actually quite simple, but it's devastating as well. And he points out, he says, if you take the Earth and you divide it into two halves, okay, and one half of the Earth, the temperature rises by 20 degrees in 1 year, okay, and the other half of the world, the temperature plunges by 20 degrees, okay, that would be devastating to the planet. But it wouldn't show up on the average temperature anywhere,
right.
Which is what people are reporting, right?
That's
right.
So
yeah. It's an interesting perspective, okay? Again, I just find the whole argument silly. Look, I'm a big believer in adaptation. I think that the mistake that they made in Texas is that they want to save the planet more than they want to save the lives of the individuals who are living and paying taxes today.
Yeah.
And so what I'm saying is, okay, just think, if you had spent the kind of money that you spend on green energy development on the simple thing, such a simple thing as updating your infrastructure, burying power cables where it makes sense to bury them, okay, you wouldn't have this problem. You wouldn't have ice building up on hydro cables, pulling them down, okay? The same thing, the City of Toronto. Okay, it's the City of Toronto. Every time there's a windstorm, and
Why does Mel Lastman come to mind?
Sorry?
Why does Mel Lastman come to mind?
The Army,
Let's call out the Army to plow those streets.
Right.
Rest in peace, Mel Lastman, the last of the great Canadian mayors.
Yeah. Oh, my God.
So the last mayor of North York.
Actually, he's not the last of the great Canadian mayors, because what's her name? Marianne Wilkinson is still alive. No, not Wilkinson. What's her name from Mississauga? Hazel
McClellan.
McClellan is still alive.
100.
McCallum, I think.
McCallum, that's it.
Is she? Yeah, but she's not the mayor anymore, I don't think.
No, she's not the mayor.
She's not the mayor, but she certainly was a mayor and still alive.
Anyway,
go ahead.
Is there really an excuse in this day and age for you to have a heavy snowfall in the city of Toronto and have people going without electrical power as a consequence of that? And I'm saying the answer is no. Those cables should be underground, just like we bury our gas lines, and just like we bury our water, and just like we bury our sewers.
But think of the jobs you'd lose repairing down hydro wires if you buried them all.
Think of the. Well, no, you're not going to.
This is the unionist in me talking now.
But you're great jobs, because someone has to dig up the cement.
Somebody's got to bury the wires, okay?
Yeah, and then what? It's like paving, right?
What do they care? That's like 2 generations from now, or 3 generations.
Governments don't like to do that,
about a
because it's not a
multi-generational
sexy thing to spend money burying wires.
Nobody wants to cut a ribbon at a cable burying ceremony.
It's a bit of, okay, so the idea of, well, and again, going back to our friend Tom Harris, who was telling me the other day, said, at the height of Hurricane Sandy, okay, there were people in New York City, in Manhattan, that were still in their offices working. They never had internet interruption, they never had power interruption or anything like that, because everything's underground. So it wasn't the power grid was not affected by Hurricane Sandy on the island of Manhattan. So, look, it's a bit of a hobby horse of mine. I understand. And people are going to go, oh, there goes that Benamy again talking about adaptation. But it just makes sense. Why, if you're going to tear up a road to widen it, okay, which we do all the time, why would you not, while you're doing that, and you're moving the hydro poles and probably installing new poles, and you're putting in new sewers anyway, and that, why wouldn't you make some sort of an accommodation while you're doing that? It's not a change overnight, but it just seems to me a more logical thing. Look, and especially, here in Canada, where you could eliminate. Let's take for the sake of argument that let's assume for the sake of argument that carbon dioxide is the evil gas that's causing climate change. Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, we produce in Canada so little carbon dioxide relative to the rest of the world that we could eliminate all emissions, and it's not going to make a difference.
No.
It's not going to make a difference because the real producers of carbon dioxide are places like China and India, and to a lesser degree the United States, although they did a great job actually reducing their carbon dioxide production outside of the Paris Accord. Yeah. So why would a Canadian government spend 1 penny of Canadian tax dollars to eliminate carbon dioxide production in Canada rather than finding ways to ensure that Canadians have safe and clean access to energy, and in particular, we're talking about in particular hydro in this case.
That goes back to our topic we talked about before, which is media manipulation. Because the media, how often does the CBC, well, I guess Tom Harris may have been on the CBC a few times, but does the CBC give time to people like Tom Harris who might contradict the theory of global warming?
Well, they haven't lately. They used to, and who knows? Maybe that'll change now. It's a good time to give a shout out. They're in the process now. Tom and his colleagues are in the process of forming a new Canadian focused group called International. He's the head of the International Climate Science Coalition, right, which has been mostly involved in the debate in the United States and internationally, but they want to be much more involved here in Canada, and so they're in the process now of pulling that whole initiative together. And I've had some talks with him about it, and they want to focus on the whole adaptation argument. They're basically saying, look, you're a Canadian government. We have an obligation, of course, Tom is Canadian as well. We have an obligation to serve the interests of Canadians.
Right.
Okay? Stop being arrogant about this, okay? Stop pretending that you're going to lead the world to nirvana, okay? That's not your job. Your job is to look after the needs and the interests of Canadians. And I'll tell you what, before you guys talk about spending 1 penny on getting rid of carbon dioxide, let's make sure that every First Nations community in this country has access to clean drinking water. When we've done that, then we can talk about doing things that are perhaps a little more superfluous.
I would agree to that.
I think that what he should tell the government is leave the leading of the Canadian people to nirvana to Nick and Joe. Because they're the only two who have their heads screwed on, along with their friend Chris.
I don't think they've chosen a new Governor General yet. So there are at least 3 potential candidates here tonight.
And, could we do
And I'll tell you what, okay?
Co-Governors General?
No, I will tell you what, Nick. If you become Governor General, I will immediately concede to you that you've won. And then I'll move on to a Senate seat.
Well, I was going to say what I would do is I would appoint you two as special advisors to the Governors General. To the Governor General. No, the Governor General doesn't do anything. Well, we can advise you what color pen to use to sign those. No, you don't get
those
it.
Acts
you
into
don't
law.
get it because my term as Governor General would be slightly different.
You're going to be like Canada's version of Prince Charles?
Oh, God, no. Oh, God, no. I just will be different. I don't know how. Well, everybody knows I'm different, but all right. With that said, that brings another show to completion. For Joe and for Chris, our triad member. I like that. We got to work that in somehow. I want to thank you all for joining us this evening. It's been a pleasure having you on board. And if you're listening to this live, thanks for joining us in the chat room. If you took the time to do that, we certainly hope so, because we love our members of the chat room. And without any further ado, I'm going to wish you all good night. So, ubi caritas et amor, Deo CBS. Good evening, God bless. Don't let anything disturb your peace, and may you have a fair wind and a following sea.